This is a random thought. For context, these are my opinions based on anecdotal experience and are subject to change. If you have opinions or thoughts that you'd like to add, you can put them in the comments. Subscribe, like, and donate if you'd like more content like this. This is a video discussing the gradients of humanity on a spectrum in a limited and narrow sense. External context matters in discussing whether or not someone is an opportunist or an exploitationist. What I give here are basic definitions and descriptions, as well as a basic analysis of each type. Let us start with some definitions. For the opportunist, number 1, they have variable and limited goals that are personalized to the individual. Number 2, they work within their own moral framework, which is a mix of genetic, parenting, social, and environmental influences. Number 3, they are conscious of their own potential shortcomings and are more likely to take accountability for their actions. Though people do rationalize, and it does depend on what the consequence is, but they are still more likely to take responsibility, or at the very least accept the consequences for their actions. Number 4, opportunists will take opportunities granted to them by the situations that do fit within their moral, personal framework or perspective, though their environment and level of desperation can change their framework where they rationalize what they're doing and why. Now, opportunists exist on a scale and can vary on what amount of risk they are willing to take based on the opportunity presented. Now let's look at what I consider an exploitationist. Number 1, they have one goal that never changes. They may rationalize that they have something else in mind, but all of their actions serve this goal. And that goal is to maximize leverage over other people and minimize or eliminate any consequences for their actions. Number 2, they have no moral framework that they work within. Everything is on the table: lying, cheating, stealing, torture, murder, blackmail, extortion, etc. Number 3, they are not conscious of their own potential shortcomings because they have no frame of reference for them, and they only have one goal. Number 4, they will take any opportunity to do anything they want. Their rationalizations may change, but their boundaries won't, because they don't have any. Exploitationists do not exist on a scale. Side note, not all psychopaths or sociopaths are exploitationists, but all exploitationists are psychopaths or sociopaths. Now let's discuss the benefits and shortcomings of each group. I'm going to flip and do the exploitationist first. Starting with the benefits. Number 1, no moral boundaries. They can push themselves to do whatever is necessary to accomplish their goal, which is also a problem for later. Number 2, they usually have a higher than average intelligence, though the reason being is natural selection. The dumb ones didn't make it. Number 3, they have a supreme confidence that complements their higher intelligence, which is very effective at intimidating others of lower intelligence. Since confidence and intimidation are also very effective against people who have little aggression and avoid conflict, it is an exceptionally powerful tool against most people. Number 4, confidence and intimidation are also tools that are amplified by the amount of resources that they acquire. If used correctly, it can create a powerful feedback loop that can propel them to the top or near the top of hierarchical social structures. Number 5, they are also very effective at creating cults of personality around not only themselves, but the way they think, act, and project themselves, though this benefit does require some charisma, which not all of them possess. However, they can get around this by hiring more unscrupulous opportunists that carry their message for them. Either way, it projects power and confidence, which can add to the feedback loop. Number 6. The cult of personality is very effective at creating zealots. which is a double-edged sword that we'll come back to. But zealots are unquestionably loyal and can extend their reach and power significantly. If they relied only on the power of paying people, their reach would end at the dollar. But by creating a cult of personality, they can infect every element of a social structure. Now let's look at some of the drawbacks for exploitationists. Some of these things most people aren't aware of. Number one, the main one, is their goal. They have no way to actually accomplish it. They can't control or demand everything and everyone to do what they want when they want. They are also entirely self-absolved, so their ideal society would fall apart because what they desire requires obtaining what they don't possess. There is no way to remove all the restrictions on themselves. It is not only inefficient and ineffective, it is not socially possible. Number two, there's a reason that all the dumb ones were found and killed off. They are an inherent, implicit danger to any social structure. These people will take whatever they can for themselves, exploit others to their maximum potential for their own personal gain, and hoard as many resources for themselves as possible. This consolidates power to a degree that it increases overall suffering of everyone else within the social structure. Since there's no limit on what they want, nor what they do to get it, this means that they endanger everyone within the social structure that they reside in. It's a drawback because they will eventually remove so much from others for themselves that even the tools needed for others to survive will become scarcer and scarcer, leading to the eventual breakdown of the social structure. Number three, their confidence can and usually does give way to arrogance, as it is usually able to get them whatever they want. Most people avoid conflict because even if won, a conflict can lead to a loss of social status, agency, or wasted resources, or all of them. So the use of confidence and intimidation works on most people, especially if they don't know how to deal with conflict. However, victory defeats the exploitationist. They have no limits, and will plow through everyone like a hot knife through butter. But the knife is never long enough, and they will eventually go too far and get stuck in a position even they can't get themselves out of. Number four, the next drawback is their cult of personality. Because most people do have a high or moderate moral framework, they're not exactly going to be attracted to the cult. Or even if they are, they'll fail at emulating their master. Even people inside the cult may realize their leader's arguments don't hold water, or they have personal standards and principles that, if crossed by the leader, will lead them to desert. On the other end of the spectrum, it's also possible that they think they can do a better job than the leader, which leads to division and dissension in the ranks. It also usually isn't the brightest people that stay and attach their identity to the cult of personality, which means that their followers have to be relentlessly aggressive to compensate for their lack of empirical support. This can also paint the leader as a kook or a moron, which has other negative side effects. Number five, another issue with this is that exploitationists have a propensity with using their zealots like disposable pawns. However, using people as disposable pawns can have a severe backlash. Most people don't like people who exploit others in that way. It's an evolutionary trait, and we have it for a reason. Also, the people who are used as a pawn can be quite vindictive against the person who used them. Number six, projecting their selfish ideology on people that aren't actually the most selfish can backfire a bit, as it's the most short-sighted of all ideologies, especially for people without their personal intellect. It also, as stated before, degrades and corrupts a society to the point where it can't actually function. Social institutions can't be trusted, company structures and contracts can't be trusted, People can't even trust one another. It distorts education, stifles innovation, leads to stress, violence, abuse, low productivity, and eventual collapse. Number 7. The last and most crucial drawback is that they have no friends. All of their comrades would stab them in the back just as soon as they would. They all smell blood. They all have no limits, and they will all take every opportunity that they can for themselves. They always and only act in their own self-interest. Some are smart and have long-term plans, but it always leads to having them on top. Also, the higher these people climb in the hierarchy, the more they attain for themselves, the more leverage they have, the more tempting they are to be taken down by other exploitationists. Their success in amassing power and wealth also puts a target on their back. The more successful they are, the more likely it is that one of their compatriots will hit that target. So, all in all, those are the most dangerous people on the planet, though not without their faults and weaknesses. Now let's talk about the rest of us. Starting with their benefits, which we don't discuss as often as we should. Number 1. Personalized goals allow us to not only reach those goals, but be diversified in a wide range of specializations. This allows us to fill out most necessary jobs needed to maintain a social structure. Given our limitations, it requires us to be creative in how we reach those goals while operating inside a moral framework. Number 2. Our ability to take accountability for our actions allows us to build trust and rapport with other people. Accountability is the bedrock of trust, which is the foundation for all forms of communication and cooperation. It also helps us at times stay grounded in reality. Number 3. Our ability to have friends and work together to help each other build elements of our communities up and help each other reach those goals on a community-wide scale allows us to build a network based on trust. It is a mutually beneficial arrangement, so long as everyone has the information and understands that most individual goals are in service of the community. These networks have been built to have controlled competition within the structural framework of society. Number 4. Controlled competition within frameworks that people know, understand, and can predict allows for understandable advancements that can benefit others within society. The larger the framework, the more expansive the development, but the less predictable and understandable it is, and the more destructive it can be, depending on what it is. Context matters. The smaller the framework, the smaller the advancement, the more understandable and predictable it can be, depending on the restrictions. Again, context matters. Number 5. Our ability to network and create social structures built on trust have helped us evolve checks and balances within our social structures to help maintain some forms of accountability and reduce the need for conflict. Now let's look at our drawbacks. We all know these, but it's good to go over them. Number 1. Our personalized goals can come into conflict with one another, and they aren't always realistic. It creates a bit of a mess within our social structures, given that life, for the most part, is already complicated enough. It's exhausting. Exhausted people are more easily pandered to, deceived, and manipulated. It's a very unfortunate aspect of humanity, but it's physically understandable. The world is big, complicated, and morally gray because it's made up of billions of people with different morals, social structures, and networks. The more that we are made aware of it, the more we yearn for the comfortable, which is counterproductive in a competitive environment and can lead to more destructive conflict. Number 2, our personalized goals may also be in conflict with society as a whole, as previously mentioned about controlled competition. Our personalized goals may also be very short-sighted and we may not be able to see the larger picture. This is especially true given the enormity of the world and the information that we have access to. It can be very overwhelming and lead us to seek simpler, more understandable, if not regressive or inaccurate solutions. Number 3. Tribalism. You knew this was coming. Our social networks are usually our primary concern, as well as maintaining the standard of living and social cohesion within. This can lead us to harming people who we see as separate from our social networks. We may even oppress other entire social networks in order to achieve those goals. Worse yet, some of us rank social networks as a form of rationalization for oppression. The ranking isn't the problem. The rationalization for oppression is. The worst of all, however, is the rationalization for oppression of individuals from imagined social networks. Not only is this harmful to other social networks, it's harmful to relations between social networks, and it's also harmful within social networks. You should know what I'm talking about. Racism. Races don't have their own social networks. There are cultures made up primarily or entirely of white or black or Native American people, but they don't represent all white, all black, or all Native American people. The cultures and communities made up of these people may have some overlap with each other, but it doesn't make them monolithic. Given the confusing nature of our ever-expanding world and information, oversimplified justifications such as seeing cultures or races as monolithic can seem attractive. They are simple solutions to complicated problems, and given that exploitationists do their best to manipulate other people for their own personal gain, this is an ever-present threat, unfortunately. Fortunately, we are evolving to be able to understand and comprehend more complicated subject matter. We can also help other people who can't understand how to deal with complicated issues by breaking those issues down and speaking to them in a language that they understand. If you want to avoid becoming a zealot or pawn of an exploitationist, you should do a few things. Number 1, do not attach your identity to an ideology, religion, or perspective. If you can't bring yourself to do that, at least give yourself as much distance as you can. The further that your identity is from the lens that you view the world, the more likely you will be able to see cracks in it. This will also allow you to adjust your position to where you can have the clearest vision. Number 2, don't just listen to the sources that you agree with, especially if it's a knee-jerk reaction. You should listen to critiques from all over the political spectrum. It can be painful, especially if it exposes you to information that your trusted sources either distorted or hid from you. Number 3, be willing to learn. This means also being able to accept the possibility that you could be wrong. If you are passionate about a subject, before engaging in a debate, you must consider more than your own personal perspective. If you're not willing to do that, it's not a debate, you're just demanding that everyone else agree with you. Number 4, treat outlets that claim to be the only source of accurate information with severe skepticism. You don't have to ignore them, but if the subject is important to you, you should consult multiple sources that you both agree and disagree with. Number 5, treat sources that offer simple solutions to complicated problems with even more skepticism. Listen to multiple critiques of those solutions and be open to the possibility that those solutions could be wrong. Number 6. Be skeptical of conspiracies. They can exist. However, the larger the conspiracy, the more people that would need to be involved, the more evidence there should be for its existence. That evidence is likely to be critiqued, and you should listen to multiple different sources to see if any of that evidence actually holds water. Anyway, that's all for now. If you want to support me for the services provided, you can subscribe, hit the bell, and like the video. Also, my Patreon is below, or you can hit the join button. Until next time, ciao to y'all.